Report on the disappearance of Maxwell Pond, aka Darkseid, Mosquito. This report is to further look into the disappearance of EJA, extrajudicial agent, Maxwell Pond, aka Darkseid, Mosquito. This agent feels that some background information in regards to the life of Maxwell, hereafter referred to as Darkseid, Mosquito, or Max, dependent upon identity at the time, is appropriate to give some insight into a situation that has, up until this point, gone fairly unnoticed. As most know, Max was the son of Ray Pond and Terak Unit #X367. Though not the first incident of cross-species breeding, Max was one of the first, and in the opinion of many, one of the successful progeny created between Terak and human. As we are all familiar with Simon Deacon, aka Gravedigger, I do not believe a discussion of failed progeny is necessary. Much focus is placed on Max's father, but in the opinion of this agent, Ray Pond, aka Samurai, genetics should not be discounted in regards to the ability, personality, or life of Max. It has been theorized that above and beyond being in EJA Category 2, for all those who choose not to keep up on internal memoranda, the most recent definition of this level is between 150 and 225% of average human strength, with no obvious abilities beyond that of a standard human. Ray also possessed some form of minor shape-shifting. This point of view is strengthened when one realizes that Ray was born in the state of Hawaii, to Hawaiian parents, yet all phenotypic traits displayed are that of the Japanese. It has been argued that her choice of identity has influenced this, but the facts remain from a phenotypic standpoint, despite having no Japanese heritage, Ray has and continues to display phenotypic traits of the Japanese. Unit X367 was a typical Terak, stranded after the Terak War, and like many of his kind, chose to make a life on Earth, and engage in the activities of an EJA. His physical stature was approximately 7 feet. Again, due to the age of the Terak War and the ensuing purges of the Terak, some reading this may very well need a refresher on the physical characteristics of the Terak. In short, as I do not feel the need to rewrite the copious volumes on the Terak, remember their bodies are comprised mainly of absorbed creatures. Mainly those will be Krent, the creatures the Terak have traditionally chosen to parasitize. Reason being, the Krent's abundance of chitin, and the distinguishing deviation, term for the absorbed parts in regards to Terakanian anatomy. For Unit X367 was two large, prehensile chitinous appendages, commonly used by the X367 in combat for both stabbing and grappling. Max's childhood was an athletic mix of Terak and Japanese warrior culture, and unlike most Terak hybrids, Max was found to retain the Terak ability to absorb other multicellular creatures, though to a much lesser extent. This will be further explained later in the report. This led to an interesting situation, in which Unit X367 actually stole a Krent from the Chicago laboratory, in order to further keep Max ingrained in the Terak culture. So much so, that Max is the only known hybrid to have successfully, if not to as great of an extent as a true Terak, completed the Kar Mithar. It can be thought of as the bar mitzvah of Terak culture, in which a Terak first absorbs a Krent. His absorption of the Krent manifested in his right arm becoming a highly chitinous secondary ingestion orifice. Beyond allowing him to consume and absorb some of the trace of a multicellular creature, it had shown itself to be effective in both offensive and defensive combat, and seemingly at will Max had the ability to use it as a functional appendage, or ingestion orifice, via a quick rearranging of the bones and organs contained in the arm, though this process seemed very unpleasant for Max. As we all remember from a few decades ago, Max became an EJA at a young age, taking the name Mosquito, and garbing himself in a red-themed ensemble, generally acting as a companion or sidekick to older EJAs, though after his second year of this, he joined the group Schoolyard, consisting mainly of younger EJAs. Having a rather charismatic personality, coupled with the slightness of his transformation, made him somewhat of a fad, and I am sure no one will disagree with this, as anyone reading this more than likely has boxes of Mosquito toys, comic books, etc., from their own children. Unfortunately for Max, with the onset of puberty came the onset of more Terakanian physical and personality traits. He became highly territorial, confrontational, and in the opinion of this agent, insane. The appearance of his now well-known right arm did nothing to help this, and due to image concerns he was ejected from schoolyard. After the ejection, Maxwell had chosen the identity Darkseid, consisting of a rather unimpressive mix of thrift store clothing, covered by a rather large trench coat, to partially hide the Terak right arm. He attempted to continue to work in New York, but he found himself in consistent conflict with other EJA, as he became increasingly more feral and territorial. At this point I would like to give an opinion, and that is that his upbringing is the only thing that stopped a transition from EJA to criminal. After several large-scale incidents that almost caused his EJA status to be revoked, Darkseid then moved to Michigan, and took domain over a small town, Archibald. It is worth noting that he developed an unhealthy obsession with a local religious figure, Brother Sid, and to a greater extent his sister, Marie Seidel, though that is a situation that would require its own report. While not impressive, during this time it can be said that Darkseid was a benefit to society. His encounters with empowered criminals were scarce, but he made himself useful in destroying regular crime, though in a manner that pushed the boundaries of the Toronto Accord quite a bit, and after 5 years managed to completely eradicate a methamphetamine epidemic that was plaguing the town. Unfortunately, due to his territorial nature, Darkseid was brought into conflict with EJA's Gatling, aka Hank Green, and Morose, aka Eric McGinnis. Both Gatling and Morose were attempting the capture of E.C. Mesmer, who had, at this time, managed to gain control of a large number of civilians and was fleeing. As to Mesmer's plan, little is known, but it has been theorized that he was attempting to cause this very conflict. In the opinion of this agent, that is not a likely scenario. During the start of the encounter between Gatling, Morose and Mesmer, Mesmer set the bus full of civilians to collide with a city bus. This I do believe was intentional to bring Darkseid into the fray. Mesmer, being a rather fine technician, despite his moral failings, would have seen this chance to cause havoc, and possibly escape. In this agent's opinion, of course. Little is known for sure about the next series of events. Pieces put together from the reports of both Gatling and Morose, and some eyewitness accounts, but either Darkseid purposely crashed the bus Mesmer set in motion, if one is to believe Gatling and Morose, or chose to save the bus full of people from Archibald with little concern for the other bus, if one is to believe the eyewitnesses. Something about this infuriated Gatling. From a personal interview, it was the fact that the bus Mesmer had set in motion had 3 times the people of the other bus. Personally, I would blame Gatling's personality just as much as any errors on Darkseid's part, causing him to fire upon Darkseid. For anyone new, Hank possesses the ability to mitigate vibrations, leading to, among other things, his ability to fire any weapon at any rate of fire, while maintaining almost pinpoint accuracy at the effective range. Unfortunately, as we will see, Hank is no longer a field agent due to injuries sustained during this encounter. A battle ensued, in which Darkseid, to his credit, attempted to fight in a non-lethal fashion, and even escape at one point, but the combination of Gatling and Morose, for those unfamiliar with Eric, he can convert his physical pain into mental stress, and project this to an enemy, creating effects ranging from rage to cowering in fear. Escape was not possible. A burst from Gatling caused an explosion at a nearby gas station, killing 2 people and injuring 8 more. This caused Darkseid to attack Gatling with more fervour, eventually subduing him, and despite the best efforts of Morose, Darkseid proceeded to break all Gatling's limbs in such a way that all bones in his body with the exception of the skull and collarbone were riddled with spiral fractures. These wounds never healed, and even our best medics say never could have healed properly, leaving Gatling with twisted, semi-functional limbs. Due to this injury, Gatling now works as an instructor, as walking, let alone firing a weapon in combat, is no longer possible. This incident caused us to send out an EJA Judicial Committee to review Darkseid's actions. This caused Darkseid to go underground, and while we indeed could and did track him, it was thought better to let sleeping dogs lie, versus take a chance of another incident causing the death of civilians. After approximately 6 months though, Darkseid dropped off our radars. and no venue of attempting to find him, normal, psychic or otherwise, has yielded any results. Suggested actions. Some may think this is simply the disappearance of a second-rate EJA who caused conflict. It is the opinion of this agent that there is more to this issue than meets the eye. How did he manage to suddenly give our organization the slip? Who could have possibly helped him? And how did a person who has a biological imperative to commit good acts simply ignore this for so long? These are all questions that we need to ask ourselves in regards to this disappearance. Conclusion. It is the opinion of this agent that further research into the location and circumstances surrounding the disappearance of Darkseid be done. Not only is it disconcerting to think of an EJA of that level of power running unwatched, despite claims to the contrary, this agent feels that Darkseid only seemed somewhat underpowered due to his circumstances. But to think that there is an organization that has the ability to hide someone well enough that we cannot find them, is a thought that nearly demands further attention.